Yes, you're leaving. Don't go. Hey, what's great today? I am Dr. Otto Jenking. This is Empire Longevity. We're doing something wild, something new and different for you. I'm going to be bringing you much more frequently on YouTube, much more frequently than we did on Facebook. Much more frequently going to be bringing you vids like this with some of the most updated current research I can find you. Some of the most updated and current impressions I have for you. Most updated and current ideas, and just downright what I'm thinking. That's really what it is. Just what I'm thinking. We always start with this though, because you got to start with this.
Welcome to Facebook Live.
Oh, I got to change that now. Oh no.
Longevity.
Now what are we gonna do?
Longevity. 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 Empire Longevity Insider with your host, Dr. Otto Jenkins.
A lot like that. A lot like that. I hate to tell those guys they have to cut another song. Hate to tell them that. Because the first one wasn't that good. Hate to have them tell them another one. I'm Dr. Otto Jenke. Welcome to Empire Longevity. I am the chief pilot of Empire Longevity. You're going to be inundated, because I know you are. I know I am inundated on a daily basis of people telling you, eat this, move this, do this, eat this, do this, do this, when it comes to your longevity. I know, because I read the stuff. I'm on top of this stuff, reading it daily. I no longer read information. I inhale it. It's much, much easier. I really wish they could come up with that thing. You know, when Neo, what was that? That whole movie series. You know what I'm talking about. Keanu Reeves. Neo, they just put that right up there in the back of his head. Of all the things we can do, that's the one thing. I don't care about self-driving cars. I don't care about, so put that right there. You're inundated with people, experts, telling you to do these one small little things along the way. It might be to lift more weights. It might be to increase your amount of protein. Might be to decrease your amount of protein. Increase your amount of vegetables. All these different things. I'm a huge fan of using 3 words when it comes to information for you. What's reasonable, what's effective, and what's cost effective. 3 things we look at. I really put those, what the information we get for you, through that strainer, through that mesh. Today I have to talk to you about posture, hyperkyphosis. Hyperkyphosis, your posture. Why now? Because when I first started practicing, I'm a practicing doctor of chiropractic. When I first started practicing 30 years ago, literally Mrs. Johansson, 82-year-old woman from like Sweden, was the only person who had that forward head posture. She was the only one. Now, get out of here. It's nuts. It's nuts. When I go into the schools and I do the scoliosis checks, the numbers are usually right around 3.2% of girls and 2.8% of boys have some kind of scoliosis, which is, instead of having the spine being straight from the front, there's a curve. What percentage of the kids nowadays do you think have that forward head posture? What percentage of the kids have the forward head posture? It's nuts. It's absolutely nuts now. Absolutely nuts. And the research on it is lagging behind, to say the least. In my office, we call it forward head posture. It's just a much simpler way of looking at it. My head is forward of my shoulders. So your ear hole should be over the AC joint right there, the AC joint, that bump right there in your shoulder, the AC joint. Your ear should be over the AC joint over the hips over the knees over the ankles. You should be able to draw a line up and down. In the medical world, they call it a hyperkyphosis. I'm going to stick with me on this one, but I have to tell you about it. So this is the kyphotic curve. You have a lordotic curve here in the neck, kyphotic curve in the midsection, lordotic curve in the low back. That's just what they call them, because your curve in the neck goes back like that. The one in the trunk goes forward. One in the low back goes back again. So the hyperkyphosis, this curve where it's supposed to be just a regular curve here, it's kind of straight there, but here it's actually accentuated dramatically. When that happens, the hips go forward and then the head goes forward. We actually measure that in my office with it's called Posture Screen. With Posture Screen. It's an app we use we've got a couple of tablets in my office, a couple of Apples. And we take the posture screen, we take your posture picture. It's the coolest thing. I show you what your posture is. Everybody thinks I got great posture until I show it to them. They're like, holy crap. Okay, let's the basis. That's the information for today. So the studies that come out on this stuff are just nuts now. And so Cato, K-A-D-O, Cato did studies 20 years ago, 19 years ago, 18 years ago on hyperkyphosis in older communities. And they measure the hyperkyphosis. I'm going to give you this. They measure the hyperkyphosis using a ruler, but the ruler, they would take it and they would measure 1.7 centimeters. 1.7 centimeters. Understand 2.5 centimeters is an inch. So a little more than a half an inch. They would take these people and have them lay down on their back. And if their head was able to lay straight down with just flat, you're good. If you need to have a block, a 1.7 centimeter block underneath your head, a little more than a half inch block, little more than a half inch block, which is nothing, right? It's nothing. A half inch block. If you need that to have your head rest, then you're at hyperkyphosis. Half an inch. Half an inch. Look what happens to you when you're in hyperkyphosis. Oh. Oosh. Hyperkyphotic posture and the risk of injurious falls in older persons. Because hyperkyphotic posture is associated with impaired physical functioning, we hypothesize that kyphosis may be associated with falls. Geesh. Hyperkyphosis was defined as requiring the use of more than one block, and the block was that half inch. Doesn't seem like much. Doesn't seem like much. Hyperkyphosis associated with falls. Are you someone who's concerned about you falling? I understand that you work on your balance, and I know people who do balance classes. I recommend you do that. But what's your posture like? You can do the balance stuff as much as you want to. If you're not mechanically built best, narrative review, hyperkyphosis in older persons. Hyperkyphosis is widely recognized yet largely ignored condition. Adults who are most affected by hyperkyphosis do not have vertebral fractures. The bones aren't fractured. They're built this way. They've adapted to this. That's one of the key things. They've adapted to this. I was asking a young, one of my patients today. She's on her way to chiropractic college in the fall. I said, when do you think this starts? She said, shh. She says, I see students, I see classmates who are built like that already. And she's 20, 21. She sees her classmates built like that. Increased risk associated with an increased risk for adverse health outcomes, including impaired pulmonary function. Your lungs and heart don't work correctly. Decreased physical function capabilities. You're just not able to get around as well. And future fractures. This is from 2007. They estimated that 20 to 40% of older adults have hyperkyphosis. This was 14 years ago, 16 years ago. I would say it's got to be dramatically higher than that now. Wouldn't you say so? Dramatically higher than that. Dramatically higher than that. Age-related hyperkyphosis. Update of its potential causes and clinical impact narratives. I found this very interesting. Is that approximately 60 to 7% of the most severe, the people who really got their heads over, cases have no evidence of underlying vertebral compression fractures. That means there's no fractures there. Because the common thinking was that, well, the bones are broken. They're not. Then what the hell's going on? Hyperkyphosis. That's what I do, folks. Hyperkyphosis among the elderly in the community, a descriptive cross-sectional study. This is from 2022. The most common postural change in hyperkyphosis, the most common postural change is hyperkyphosis, which decreases physical performance, ability to perform daily activities, overall quality of life, and increase the risks of falls in the elderly. Grandma and grandpa or mom and dad aren't going to be able to get up and get around in the house as easily because they're built this way. Understand what they're saying here. Decreases physical performance. They're not going to be able to get up and get around as well. Ability to perform daily activities and their overall quality of life, and increases the risks of falls. I mean, you start looking at this and going like, but their posture is just bad. That's all. No, it's not. Early identification and interventions of hyperkyphosis are thus warranted to prevent the detrimental consequences in the later stages of life. Because when does this start? It doesn't start in your 60s and 70s. When does it start? It doesn't start in your 60s and 70s. This was a tough one to read. How does thoracic kyphosis, your mid-back being that curve, affect patient outcomes in growing rod surgery? So some of these patients have rods put in their backs. Oh, the most common implant complication was rod breakage. Oh, I just look at that and go like, especially when you think about, I see this in my practice on a daily basis. I literally harp on people about this. I think it's just one of those things that's, we know what's causing the problem now, and it's, it's all this and looking at, with these guys, all that. We know what the problem is. Progressive spinal kyphosis tends to increase with age, associated with adverse health effects. They say 20 to 40%. I think they got of the adults have this. I think they just took that number from the previous. It may be associated with adverse health consequences, including impaired physical function, pain and disability, impaired pulmonary function, increased mortality. So associated with adverse health effects and increased mortality once again. Once again, Cato Cato's Rancho Bernardo study. Hyperkyphotic posture predicts mortality in older community dwelling men and women, a prospective study. This is from 2004, 19 years ago. I found this amazing, is that in cause-specific mortality analysis, hyperkyphotic posture was specifically associated with an increased rate of death due to atherosclerosis. Atherosclerosis is the hardening of the arteries and of the blood vessels. Arteries and organs. Increased rate of death due to atherosclerosis. Wait a minute. I mean, you look at that and start saying, holy crap. Could this also be a factor in blood pressure and cholesterol? I don't know. They don't say this in here whatsoever, but could it be in pulmonary? I mean, whether you breathe, but in the function of, we know pulmonary function is affected. And now we're going to find out that the arteries and organs are going to be growing harder, faster. Wow. It's from 2004. It was bad then. Now it is nuts. So you start looking at, I don't get out much, but hyperkyphotic posture among adolescents, still a public health problem. And this is from 2022. Body position is representative of physical and mental health. How many people you see built like this? I mean, would you say that those people are in fantastic mental health or not? Bad posture can lead to spinal complication, affects the muscular system, deforms the skeletal bone, and causes abnormal development. Is identified as a public health problem. You start going, what? Some of this stuff is nuts. Among adolescents, it is a problem that starts in adolescence and has its biggest problems show up as we age. Among adolescents, posture disorders are considered a public health problem because they can be a predisposing factor for degenerative conditions of the spine in adult age. How the child grows is how the senior grows old. Faster. The adult grows faster, older, faster. Several studies show posture, especially in adolescents, conclude that the lack of adopting a correct posture will determine in time the development of degenerative articular disorders, how the bones come together won't be functioning as well. Major muscular imbalances. Well, of course, if my head is dramatically forward, how could the muscles in the back? I've got to work tremendously overtime. And dysfunction of the kinematic chain. How the nervous system sees, where am I at? How is it functioning? With spinal or irradiating painful episodes, pain radiating, with improper development and with deformities that impact on the functionality, and also negative psycho-emotional disorders resounding on the social condition of the adolescent. When does it start? The people in the Rancho Bernardo studies, the Cato studies of the older people, they didn't start that way all of a sudden in their 60s and 70s. They started decades earlier. The problem started decades earlier. You're seeing your teens walk around now. You're seeing maybe your spouse who's 20, 30, 40 years old. You're seeing them now with that head forward. Thoracic hyperkyphosis is also associated with incorrect posture while riding or prolonged incorrect sitting on a seat. Also, recent studies showed that using a computer or other electronic devices for a period longer than 4 hours, the average person is watching some kind of tablet like 8 hours a day, represents an additional risk factor for the development of postural thoracic kyphosis. And they wrote in here, although there are conflicting data about time spent in a vicious position. Vicious? I mean, it's bad. I don't know if it's vicious. Is it vicious? Vicious. Where they come up with that? Negatively influences the respiratory muscles. The muscles that control breathing are adversely affected. It's bad. Pulmonary vitality capacity decreases. Habitual incorrect posture, although easily reversible at the beginning, tends to become fixed in time. It was kind of nuts how deep this can get. How absolutely deep this can get. One of the keys of this article was that making a habit out of maintaining a correct posture is essential for the functioning and health of the human body. We got to keep you around for as long as possible, as good as possible, correct? I mean, that's what we want. One of the simplest things we can do, a reasonable, effective, and cost-effective thing to do, was to make sure your posture is good as possible. Make sure your posture as good as possible. You can go on to my website, jankechiropractic.com, JANKE chiropractic.com, and you'll see a link up top that says exercises. You can start off with our Super 3 exercises right there. Super simple. They say this about the children now, the teens and adolescents now, and undoubtedly the college students. This target population has proven to be unique because they are the first to grow in a world in which technology, who not long ago was at the top of technological progress, is now available to everyone. And that they say this is a problem. The technology they have is part of the problem. Part of the problem. Again, I bring this up because we start looking at, can your kids lay down on their back and not need a half inch? A half inch. That's it. A half inch wedge underneath their backs. We start to do this test in my office. They've adapted this test to do it on a wall. Because quite frankly, some people can't get down on their backs. Even on my chiropractic tables, which are off the floor. And the people can't it's difficult for them to get down, then get back up again. So I have them do it up against a wall, and they still can't do it. It's not good. You fatigue quicker. Your muscles have to work dramatically harder to hold you in that position. If we're going to look at one of the most simplest things that we can look at with you and start saying, let's start building you better now for the future. You want to talk about preventive healthcare. This is preventive healthcare. Building you better. If you are someone who's in their 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, our job with you is to, one, stop the progression. Fundamental. Stop the progression of this. Two, start reeling it back in as much as possible. It's not just a matter of bringing the head back. It's bringing the body, bringing your trunk up and back also, shoulders back. We have to open up the shoulders. It's not hard to do. It takes work. It took decades for you to get bad. For some of your kids, it's taken them years to get bad. Absolutely. Absolutely. Again, I look at the things that are going to be effective, cost-effective, and reasonable to do. This is one of them. This is one of them. Effective, cost-effective, and reasonable thing to do that we can get you built better so that we can keep you around. You can be around. And if you want to have fun, you got to be able to function better. If you want to have fun, you got to be able to function better. And to function better, we got to get you built best. This isn't hard. The hard part is not being able to do what you want to do. That's the hard part. We'll get you built better. Reasonable, effective, cost effective. Yep. if you ever have any questions, always feel free to email me, otto@empirelongevity.com. otto@empirelongevity.com. Let's see how we can get you best. Build you better now for the future. I don't care how old you are. You have no idea how long you're going to be around. You have no idea how long you're going to be around. So let's rock those years then.
Empire longevity. Empire longevity. Empire longevity. Empire longevity. Empire Longevity Facebook Insiders Live with your host, Dr. Otto Janke.
We have to record that whole thing now. Hey, thanks for being here. We'll see you next time. And always make sure that you subscribe and like it.